I've missed you. I'm sorry if I've neglected you. I've been busy hiding from coronavirus. um, just working on some other projects, hanging out with the family, you know what I mean? Nothing amazing or hugely interesting to bring unless you have some questions about what's going on here. But despite the fact that the topic of the day is, the coronavirus crisis, I've been brought to somehow have my mind on child support and family law. And why is that? Because one of the headlines I saw and dug into afterwards was this idea that people who owe child support would have their stimulus checks taken from them. So the stimulus checks, and I'm wondering, this is an emergency measure. This thing is supposed to help people to confine themselves safely and stay alive during this crucial time, but you don't deserve that if you have a debt to the US government for child support? Are you kidding me? And it made me really need to say a few things on this topic, because I realized that there's this feminist mantra, that we chant from the rooftops. Well, not we, but we in the royal sense. We chant from the rooftops this idea that these men deserve to be tortured in this way and punished in this way because child support is in the best interests of the child. And I wanted to dig into that a little further, right? We can start with the idea, or with the problem, rather, that some 40-50% of men who have child support judgments brought against them are below the poverty line. They have no money. Huh? Okay, so basically what this becomes is not a mode of collection of payment, but rather a mode of indentured servitude and terrorism, right? Because basically what ends up happening is this person is indebted in a way that they're unable to pay. But unlike all other debts, this one can actually land you in jail. You know what I mean? You can have debts of all sorts. Debtor's prison has been outlawed in the United States, in Canada, and most of the Western world, except if the debt you have is child support, right? Okay, and I'm trying to understand how it could possibly be in the best interests of a child to now not only have a father that is poor and unable to provide funds, but one that's inaccessible because he's in jail, or cannot drive a car, or cannot get on a plane, or, right? Okay. Let's back up a little bit to the premise, this idea that we are trying to enforce these laws for the best interests of the child. Okay. If child support was created in the best interests of the child, it would be something that wouldn't depend on whether or not the mother wants to seek it, right? I mean, I have to feed and clothe my child because this is in the best interests of my child. It's not up to me, whether or not I provide my kid with food or clothing or shelter, because these things are truly, legally, considered to be in the best interests of the child. And so the child needs these things, right? But if child support is something that the government only goes after men for if the mother asks for it, then it's not about the child. It's just not about the child. If it were necessary for the child, it would be mandated whether or not the mother requested it in the same way that food and shelter and clothing and all the rest of that stuff is, right? We say that we're doing this to men because this is necessary for children to have full and complete lives. But if a woman chooses to have in vitro fertilization, let's say, no one tells her that she's depriving her child of a father. This is her choice, right? That's what she chose for her child. So there's no problem there. The father then has zero expectation of child support or presence in this child's life. But since that's what the mother chose, that's okay. There's no problem there, right? So the idea that every man is responsible for the sperm, for the children his sperm creates, is already false off the rip, right? Women can go purchase some sperm and have a baby, and no man would be held responsible for that child because she chose for no man to be responsible for that child. Yes? Okay, let's take another scenario. A woman can have a child, raise it alone all her life, decide when the child is 17, she wants child support for the last 17 years, and pursue it and win. How would a decision like that be made in the best interests of a child, where someone might not even know that they have a child for 10, 12, 15 years because you didn't need the money then, huh? But now that we've decided that we're going to pursue him, all of a sudden he's become a person who's been neglectful for 15 or 16 or 17 years. So once again, it is based on the choice of the mother, if at all she wants this man present, and when she wants to include him in this kid's life, right? So I don't see that as being something that's in the best interests of the child or of family in any kind of way. It leaves the choice totally up to the woman. If you look at reproductive rights, okay, so we say men can decide whether or not to have sex. Absolutely. They can decide whether or not to wear a condom. Absolutely. But somehow, if a man decides to say, I don't know, believe a woman who says, I'm on the pill, I have an IUD, I'm on Depo-Provera, I'm taking this or I'm taking that. If he chooses to believe her, so now they had a discussion, right? They made the decision together that they didn't want children, except maybe she wasn't telling the truth. Where are his reproductive rights? Where are his reproductive rights? And would women like it if men started acting like they couldn't be trusted on that level? I think then everybody would be insulted. Everybody would be insulted. He doesn't believe me. I told him this and I told, right? Okay. So it means what? A woman doesn't have to depend on whether a man is telling the truth or not to protect herself from an unwanted pregnancy. A man, on the other hand, does. And it's naive to say, oh, just put on a condom. So should men who are married to their wives wear condoms because they don't want a kid and maybe their wife secretly does? Is that realistic? Should people in long-term committed monogamous relationships, they should start wearing condoms because a man can't be sure if the woman that he's with is telling the truth? Like, there's a clear disadvantage here, all right? So to pretend that the man has equal say in whether or not a baby is made is false, all right? It's just false. It's patently false. All right, so let's fast forward now. She's pregnant, all right? So if she decides that she doesn't want to have a baby, then no one is concerned about the best interests of the child. Yeah? It's only if she decides that there is to be a child whose best interests are important, at that point will the child's best interests become important. But the person who makes that decision is the woman. It's not the man. All right, let's fast forward now. She decides that she wants to have a baby. All right. When the baby is born, so now we have a live child. And she decides, you know what? I want to opt out of parental responsibility. All she has to do is go to the nearest church, hospital, orphanage, social services agency, say, listen, I don't want to take care of a baby, and hand it over. And she will suffer no legal consequences, no criminal consequences. Nothing will happen to a woman who gives birth to a baby and then decides that she doesn't want it anymore. As long as she doesn't harm that child, right? We're not talking about abuse. As long as she doesn't abuse that kid in any way. If a woman who has a baby decides after the baby is born, she doesn't want the baby, no one will force her to keep it. No one will force her to be responsible for it. No one will force her to be financially responsible for it. No one will force her to send a check anywhere or to do any of that. She will be free at the moment she decides she does not want this child that she's had. She has the space to do that. Do men have that space? If a child is born and a man decides, I don't want a baby, can he do that without being the scum of the earth? Can he do that without being a criminal? No, he can't. Once again, if the woman decides that this child needs to have two parents, needs to have two responsible people, then she can make that happen. But if a man decides that that is the case, he cannot make that happen in either direction. He has zero options. There have been cases in the United States where children have been given up for adoption without their father's consent. Okay. So this idea that the forcing of child support, the arrangement of whatever visitation the woman decides on, however much she wants him to have, or however little she wants him to have, is about the best interests of the child. That's a lie. It's a lie. Because at the end of the day, if a woman decides she doesn't even want to tell a man he has a baby, there's no law that says she has to. There's no law in any state that says it's a crime to not tell a man that he has a baby. Right? So if a woman decides, you know what, I can raise this kid by myself, I don't need no man, my kid don't need no daddy, then all of a sudden the best interests of the child become that. The court will enforce nothing else. If she decides that the only role I want this child's father to have is one of an automatic teller, she can have that too. There's no law that speaks to the misuse or misapplication of child support, right? So ultimately, even how the money is spent, they don't care. As long as it's in the woman's hands, it's automatically in the best interests of the child. So once she is paid in the way she wants to be paid, the best interests of the child have been protected. What kind of retarded system is that? We are not talking about the best interests of anybody's child right now. What we're talking about is giving women what they want. That's what we're talking about. And that might be a worthwhile discussion, but that's a different discussion from the one we're having. So if we're going to have an honest discussion, the discussion should be, should women have all the control over reproduction and who has access to children and what kind of support they have? And then we can debate that, whether that's fair or not, whether that's right or not, right? The statistics demonstrate that some 28%, that's almost 3 in 10, 28% of paternity tests demonstrate that the man is not the child's father. I'm going to say that again, okay, for those who can't hear me loud and clear. 28% of paternity tests demonstrate that the man is not the father of the child in question in America today. Now, I don't know if that happens by accident, but what I will say is that's a whole lot of power for somebody to have, to not reveal even the knowledge that the child could belong to someone else, and then force a man who didn't know better to pay child support. We say once again, it's the best interest of the child. The child is accustomed to having this man. The child's been raised by this man. When men choose to be stepfathers, so they come into a situation where there's a kid, and then it splits up, there's no child support law for them, right? So clearly, there's nothing on the books that says that just because the man was around the kid and raising the kid, that means he owes the mother child support, because stepfathers do it all day. And they have absolutely no legal obligation to do so. There's no family court in the world that will do that. She might get alimony if they were married. But if he was aware when he came into the situation that the child in question did not belong to him and he chose to raise it anyway, and then he decided that he doesn't want to anymore, there's no court that would compel him to do so. But yet this person who didn't know, this person who was tricked, who never agreed to raise somebody else's child, this is the person who's forced to pay? And this is somehow in the best interest of the child? Are you kidding me? Like, we need to stop playing this game where we throw everything and its box into this crate called feminism and act like it's equality that's being sought here. This is privilege that's being sought here. This is control that's being sought here. It's not equality. If we were seeking equality, then we would say men should have the same freedom to walk away from a child that they didn't agree to as a woman has to walk away from a child that she doesn't want. But instead, we demonize the men, but we understand the women. That's not equality at all. It's not equality. It's not anything that resembles equality. And it's certainly, I don't think, deserving of punishment to want to know that when somebody told you that you were going to be a daddy, that it was true. You know, if this were 1 in a million cases, we wouldn't be talking about this, right? Like, whenever this topic is brought up, women like to act like it's some really, really rare exception where the man is proven. No, 28%. When tests are taken, 28% of men are not the daddy. Right? And I mean, there could be a really, really, really simple solution to this, right? I mean, no hospital in the world would let a woman leave a hospital with a baby that they weren't sure was hers. But they do that shit to men every day. They take every precaution in the world to make sure that the baby is connected to the right mother. They put the bracelet on the ankle and the bracelet on the wrist and the footprints and the whole bit, and they keep it all together, right? Because they want to make sure that there are no switched babies. If a baby gets switched and a woman goes home with the wrong child, the hospital owes her a whole lot of money. Huh? Okay. So why not take the same care to make sure that we have the right daddy's name on the paper too? Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, considering all the thousands of dollars that it costs to give birth at a hospital in America, what's the extra $100? Like, why aren't paternity DNA tests standard? Why isn't it standard? Why isn't it a simple standard when a baby is born, when the man goes to sign the paper, there should be a DNA test attached to that. They will not put a woman's name on a birth certificate unless they are absolutely sure that she is the mother. So why is it okay to put a man's name on a birth certificate if we are not absolutely sure that he is the father? Why do we have this double standard? And for women who are seeking so-called equality, they should support this, right? They shouldn't be offended. In the same way that they're not offended when the hospital wants to make sure that the baby that they're holding is theirs, why would they be offended if a man wants to know the same thing? What's the difference? There's no difference, right? And so in the same way that they won't put her name down unless they know she's the mother, no man's name should be put on a birth certificate unless they know he's the father. And that's basic. That's basic. That shouldn't even come down to relationship, intimacy, and trust, and this and that. It's a legal contract. When you put your name on a kid's birth certificate, you are taking responsibility for this child for the next 21 years. I mean, heaven forbid the child is disabled in some kind of way. That's a lifetime commitment. Why would it be a problem to simply take this test as a standard? As a standard, where it's not even something that men have to ask for. But once again, women have the privilege of not needing to worry about who their baby's mom is. But if a man even poses the question, he's a demon, he's a terrible person, he doesn't trust you, he fucked up, he's this, he's that. It should be standard. You should not be able to put a man's name on a kid's birth certificate unless there's a DNA test that says he's the father of the child. That's not hard. But you know why that doesn't happen? Because while the state cares that, mothers not be separated from their children, because the mother's role is caregiver, and they want to make sure that the caregiver and the child are in the right hands, the man is seen as a check, and they don't care who writes it. They don't care. His role is not to be there unless the woman says so, and she can choose whoever she wants, right? Daddy or not. So they want to make sure that the kid has the care, and so they make sure that the kid is linked to the correct mother. But since all they want from Buddy is a regular check, they don't care who signs on that dotted line. And that's the bottom line right there. And the sad thing is a lot of women don't either. See? And so if we want to talk about equality and rights and treating people fairly and people living up to their responsibilities, I think the beginning of that would be holding men and women to the same standards when it comes to parenting. I'm not talking about giving them the same duties. I understand women are women and men are men, but to the same standard. Hold them to the same standard. If he must be responsible, so must she. If it is important for a child to have their father present, then that should remain the truth and not depend on whether a woman decides that she agrees with that statement or not. Because it's the best interest of the child that we're looking for, right? So it shouldn't matter whether the mother wants something that's not in the best interest of the child or not, because we should be prioritizing the best interest of the child, right? Shouldn't depend on her whim. Make the standards equal. Men cannot trick women into having babies. That's just how it goes, right? So you don't turn around and blame them when they end up in a situation where they believed one thing and it turned out to be another, because that can only happen to them. It never happens to a woman. A woman never worries about that. She never even worries about having to keep her child or be responsible for it. The law provides all types of exit doors from motherhood for women. Anytime you don't feel like being a mom anymore, there's somewhere you can go and tell them, listen, I don't think I can do this. They're happy to help you, right? When you say you don't feel like being a parent anymore, you don't feel capable, you don't have the resources, whatever it is a woman says, I can't take care of this child anymore. The state is there to take that off of your plate. They're not going to judge you, and they're not going to blame you, and they're not going to force you to pay. They're going to take it away. They're just going to take away the responsibility because you said you don't want it. But you think that that's unacceptable for a man to have those same options. And then we talk about who has privilege. Then we talk about whose life we care about and whose life we don't. Well, it would seem to me that in this male-dominated world, somehow, when it comes to one of the most important things there is for human existence, men actually don't have very much say now, do they? So anyway, it's just a thought. So as we're sitting around laughing and giggling and making fun of the deadbeats that are not paying their child support, keep in mind that 3 of them ain't even that kid's daddy, most likely. Keep in mind that 4 out of them, I don't know if there's an overlap, don't even have any money and are just as much in need of assistance. Keep in mind that they may not have chosen to be anybody's daddy. Keep in mind that if the woman wanted to not be a parent, she had that option, but since she chose to be a parent, she made the choice for 2 people. Keep all of that in mind before you make these blanket judgments about men who won't, keep their word, who won't respect their commitments. Because that commitment there, it's a presumption you're making. You don't know. And there are going to be a lot of people. I was just reading a case about a man paying was a billionaire, $1 million a month in child support, found out when the kid was 5 years old that it wasn't his. And everybody knew who the daddy was, but the daddy didn't have no money. We see this all day, every day. Many states' laws make it that a woman doesn't even have a choice. If she married to somebody, his name is automatically going on the birth certificate. And then you end up with men that got 4 out of 5 kids that are not theirs. So let's keep the standards equal. And to the men out there, I would say, I just saw this in a clip. Take Reagan's advice, trust but verify. Trust but verify. The same way the woman wants to know for sure that they gave her the right baby, and she's not trying to diss nobody, she just wants to be sure. You too, do not put your name on a piece of paper unless you've taken a paternity test, or unless it's been, coronavirus confinement for 9 months and you've not seen outside anybody. But considering what's at stake, considering the seriousness, responsibilities, and duties that are associated with fatherhood, I don't see it as insulting or patronizing or wrong in any way to ask for a paternity test before you sign the contract. You wouldn't sign any other contract, like blindly. Don't sign that one blindly either. And no one should be resisting that, right? There's only one reason to resist a paternity test. So It shouldn't be an issue for anybody. It shouldn't be an issue for anybody. Have a paternity test. Okay? It's important. Because you don't want to be one of those 28 out of 100 men who end up with their name on a piece of paper and another piece of paper that don't have their name. Right? The one that would show the DNA link, right? The actual father's DNA. Yeah. You know, as we mentioned, contract. Here's just a tidbit of information that I'll leave you with that a lot of us don't realize, right? Even in cases of statutory rape, you know, those cases where the teacher sleeps with the student or whatever it is, right? If that grown-ass woman gets pregnant, that little boy still owed child support. He's a victim of a crime. But he still got to pay child support. She take him to court, he still got to pay child support. Even the victims of statutory rape got to pay child support. Are we going to call them deadbeats too? Stop using that word like it's a blanket that covers everybody. It don't. It does cover some people. But considering how skewed the situation is in the favor of women, the fact that there are some that manage to, you know, abscond is miraculous, frankly. Huh? All right, so there are my thoughts. I'm sad to hear that there are many who will have their coronavirus stimulus checks robbed from them because, you know, of some responsibility they likely had absolutely no say in. But them's the breaks in America. I love you.